Yeah, well, I think the fact that most Americans aren't sitting around in a circle at a white grief seminar or going to a race to dinner event, that's sort of the point. That's why it matters, because most people are not true believers like this. They want nothing to do with this craziness. And yet, like, the people you see in the film are the ones who are coming up with these programs that are then foisted on normal Americans at their jobs.
Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh torch the woke racist policies used by the left like DEI in this clip. As Ben Shapiro interviews Matt Walsh and discussing Matt Walsh's film, they explain how insane the woke far left is, both making the film and society. So folks, let's jump into the video.
And so I think we were able to kind of take advantage of that sort of arrogance of these people.
I mean, what's amazing about this sort of film is that, as you say, because they think that you're one of them, they say things, a lot of these people, that they would never say in a public setting against somebody who's adversarial. Actually, now that I think about it, I actually did something similar when I wrote a book called Primetime Propaganda about sort of the insider Hollywood story. And I just sent out a bunch of emails, this is well before I was much more well-known. And it said, I was a graduate of Harvard Law School, my name was Ben Shapiro. And so people immediately assumed that because my last name was Shapiro and I went to Harvard Law School, I must be on the left, because obviously Jewish liberal from Harvard Law. And so instead of wearing a yarmulke, I would wear a Harvard Law baseball cap, just walking in interviews, and people would just say the thing. And a lot of this movie is that. So number one, how did you get all these people in the room with you? Apparently, I mean, we saw the budget. I know the budget. So it was not cheap to get many of these people in the room. There's a good living being made by DEI consultants.
Yeah, that's the answer right there. Most of the people we talked to were willing to perhaps even put their better judgment to the side if we just pay their fee, which of course is funny because they also claim that they're fighting racism and they want to get the word out about that, but they'll only do it if you pay them. And so that's one thing we do in the film is we tell the audience very directly, like, this is how much this person charged us to talk to them. And you're going to see that some of the price tags are quite substantial.
And I think for folks who don't actually understand how deep-rooted this is in American society, I think most Americans, they look at this like, this is very fringy. I mean, not that many people that I think normies know goes to a white guilt seminar where they weep about their exposure to white privilege and all of this sort of stuff. Most people are presumably not doing, as we'll see in another clip, a dinner party with Sarah Rao. We'll get to that in a minute. But this does pervade all of American society. I mean, it's baked into law. It's baked into employment policies at a wide variety of companies. According to Kamala Harris, it's baked into her policies as would-be president. Equity is pervading all parts of the federal government. Maybe you can explain for a second, like, why Americans should really care about DEI. It's become a buzzword on the right, but for a lot of people, they don't necessarily understand what it is.
Yeah, I think the fact that most Americans aren't sitting around in a circle at a white grief seminar or going to a race to dinner event, that's sort of the point. That's why it matters, because most people are not true believers like this. They want nothing to do with this craziness. And yet, like, the people you see in the film are the ones who are coming up with these programs that are then foisted on normal Americans at their jobs. So maybe in your free time, you're not choosing to go to something like this. But the problem is that this stuff is brought to you in places where there's no reason why it would be there. The fact that you just want to work, you're working a job has nothing to do with any of this. And yet you're being forced to, at the very least, listen to this sort of lecturing, if not actively affirm it in a lot of cases. So this is why we have to care about it, because we really have no choice. I wish we were in a position where we could look at some of these people in the film and say, yeah, who cares? The total fringe doesn't matter. What they say is totally irrelevant. I want to get to a point where it is irrelevant, but right now it's not.
Yeah, folks, I don't know about you, but in my opinion, DEI is simply a plague on society. And like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh brought up, some of these DEI people, I mean, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars in these corporations and companies to tell you you're horrible. Like, how sweet of a gig is that? You're going to pay me money to tell you how bad you are? It's almost like being a personal trainer. Like, you're fat, you're out of shape, do one more. But they're not making nearly as much money. And it's insane. And look, it's a good point that Matt Walsh brought up, is that it does matter because a lot of these people are still in positions of power. They're running companies. They're in and they're taking care of investments. They are mayors, they are governors, Newsom. They are still in positions of power, and they think this way. Either they really do, or they're grifters. But either way, like the common man, the common person, all they do is suffer through all of this. Like, this is a plague that I hope gets absolutely stamped out here soon, ever since Donald Trump won the election. But we only got to wait and see, because now these people are talking about resisting. 2025 is going to be crazy, folks. Let me know in the comments what you think. Leave a like. Let's get back in.
So when you were preparing for the film, did you have to read a lot of the tomes from these people? One of the people who you get in the film is Robin DiAngelo, the author of White Fragility, which is one of the best-selling anti-racist books of the last 10 years. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It was used as sort of the guide for the pathetic white people during the race riots of 2020, during the George Floyd uprising. Did you have to read through a lot of this material in order to prep for the film?
There's only so much that I can subject myself to. I certainly listened to several lectures from these people. I did read Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility.
Truly an awful piece of
It's horrific. I mean, it's just, and it's also just.
By the way, folks, if you want to see like a full-scale review of that, I think I once did like an hour-and-a-half review of this on YouTube, where I went like point by point through Robin DiAngelo. It's such trash.
And I think I talked to you before we went and interviewed her too, because I knew you were the resident Robin DiAngelo expert. So you know from reading the book that it's not only like the ideas are terrible, obviously, but it's also just bad writing. It's a slog to get through. There's nothing entertaining. It's just like being nagged while you sit there for 3 hours reading this book. It's just a very unpleasant experience. And I figure once you read one book, that's the other thing. It's like once you've read one of these books, you get the idea. It's always the same thing. It's the same ideas. All the people we talk to in the film, they all have the same central thesis. Right?
And the way they define racism is that they are participants in a system that perpetuates racism. As Ibram X. Kendi once suggested, he was asked to define racism, and he said a system that perpetuates racist ideas for racist purposes, which of course is not a definition of a term. You cannot define a term by using that same term. If I ask you to define shoe and you say, well, it's a shoe that fits on your foot, that has not helped in any way, shape, or form. But
yeah, there was a moment in time when we slightly toyed with the idea that like maybe this movie should really be called "What is a Racist?" because that we found that right there is actually a question that trips these people up, which is just that, like, what is a race? Like, what is racism? And with Ibram X. Kendi is not the only one who can't really define it, because if he gives the actual answer, which of course it's not complicated, like if you hate someone because of their race, if you think another race is inferior to your own, then you're racist. That's basically what racism is. But they don't want to say that, because then that, number one, that implicates all races potentially. Anyone can be racist. They don't want to accept that. And number two, they know that most people don't feel that way. And so if that's the definition of racism, the average person will hear that and think, okay, yeah, I legitimately don't feel that way about other races. I'm not racist. So these people have nothing to say to me. I'm free. But they don't.
Well, it's a power game. It's about implicating a system. They're not interested in implicating individuals, only insofar as they can then use those people as an attack on the broader quote-unquote racist system. And the way that they define racism is any system that perpetuates inequality in outcome between two groups is a racist system. And the way you can tell that the system perpetuates the inequality is that the inequality exists. So if there's any inequality of result between white people and black people in any measure of American life, except athletics, in any measure of American life, then it must be that this is a racist system, and it's been set up by the group that is predominantly successful in order to victimize the other group. So success equals racism in this particular way of viewing the world, which is why Asians are now white adjacent, because Asians are too successful. It's why Jews went from being Jewish to being white. It's why if you are a black person and you are too successful and you vote Republican, you are now considered white, because you can't be part of that institutional structure. It's all ridiculous power games masquerading using the words that we all thought that we knew. When we were growing up in the 1990s, everybody knew what a racist was. It wasn't like you had to go through all these hoops to try and figure out what the hell it meant. It wasn't particularly complicated. And so you would see something racist and you would call it out and everybody sort of agreed on it, and then we'd all move on with our lives. But that wasn't enough for these people, because what it really is a Marxist revolution in the guise of race speak. And they're lying about it, and that's why they can't define it, because if they were to define it, it'd become clear.
That's also why part of the game is, especially if they want to implicate Asians and even some black people as being somehow partly white. The way they do that, of course, is you just tack on ness at the end, whiteness, and so you turn, it's like they've turned racism into this kind of amorphous concept, and then they turn being white into an amorphous concept too, where it's if you have skin we consider white, then you're part of whiteness, but you can be a part of whiteness and not even be white, and we find that out in the film also. That's a theme they return to quite often. Is there's white people and then there's whiteness, and whiteness is a terrible thing.
I think the left really started to show how crazy they were, like Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro brought up, when they started to exclude people for all sorts of reasons. You exhibit whiteness, black successful guy. I mean, all their reasons and more. When someone just finds any plain old excuse to get rid of you or make you the bad guy, even though you really haven't done anything, that's more or less the bad guy projecting what they're doing on everyone else. And Ben Shapiro is right. This really is cultural Marxism. They just found a different way to smuggle it in, but it's the same thing. Why you have to support the party. You can't have a divergence of opinion, groupthink, power imbalance, oppressor, repress. It's all exactly the same dynamics, just used in a different way. And yeah, it's been in America for a while. And even now, it's still here. It's still in all sorts of places. And it's going to take years to get rid of all of it, unfortunately, because it's not going to go away willingly. Like, they will do anything and everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen. The deep state, everything else, whoever else is a part of it. But either way, culturally, yeah, it is absolutely awful. Like, it's got to go. These people are the very thing that they claim everybody else is. And when you notice that that's the type of person that is, like, no one likes those people. No one likes the a-hole who's just projecting how bad they are on everyone else. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. But folks, let me know in the comments what you thought about Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and what they had to say about DEI and the racism on the quote-unquote tolerant left. Yeah, it's insane, folks. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.